Hello and welcome to HAC Chats. I'm your host, Adams-Cairns, and I'm joined today by actor, DJ, stylist, model, activist and business owner,
Jeez.
Toks James.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. We met in one of the more unusual ways, which is that your dog, little Rosa, ran into my house, perched herself on this sofa just here, made herself at home. She was closely followed by what I now know is your wife and your daughter, Elise and Willow, came sprinting in here. And through them and that happy circumstance, I got to meet you.
That's right.
So thank God for Rosa.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm sure you don't say often when she's bickering and barking at 6 a.m.
Definitely not.
But today we'll say thank God for Rosa. So, Toks, thank you for coming.
No, thank you for asking me.
Not at all. This has probably been the longest I've ever waited for any episode. I think I wrote this episode in March. And I was like, let's do it. We've got Toks, it's perfect. Liz was like, you can't go over there. There's this thing, it's called Corona. Oh. He's got a young daughter. You probably shouldn't be going to other people's houses. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's probably fine.
You should have just asked. We would have been fine.
Yeah, you would have been good, but Liz would have left me.
You will. Fair enough.
She knew more than me. I was like, oh, Corona's no big deal.
Although they do say the kids are carriers. They're like, they don't, even though they don't exhibit symptoms, but they
she's
literally.
the problem.
Yeah, literally.
Willow was the problem.
Yeah, a little flea bags, running around infecting everyone.
Now, as I said at the beginning, you are clearly a man of many talents, right?
If you say so.
Yeah, I can say that. But it's your work as the owner of your fashion brand, Undivided. Do we call it a fashion brand? What are you calling it, actually?
Well, I'm calling it activist fashion
yes,
brand. Yeah.
I was going to get to that. Yeah. Activist fashion brand sounds cooler. The Undivided, as you are wearing and we are displaying behind us, which we're going to focus on today. Right?
Okay.
Now, I usually start by introducing my guest and then talking about their idea. But I think with this one, more than any other episode, probably, those two things are so one and the same.
Right.
That it'd be silly to separate them.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
So, Undivided is an activist fashion brand.
Right.
It's a brand with values that's wholly committed to giving some of its profits to charities and causes that you believe will help, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems fitting that you've created a clothing label because it appears that perhaps your relationship with labels throughout your life that I think has possibly led you down this path.
Right.
Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. I mean, for me, it's like, one of the reasons why we called it Undivided was because I'm just kind of sick and tired of everyone sort of like labeling each other different things and then using those labels to separate themselves, kind of thing. You know, like it's this person's a Jew, or this person's a Muslim, or this person's transgender, or this person's like gay. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and then it's just constant, and then you you'll listen to one group and they're complaining about people are like they hate us and everything else, but within that group they will hate someone else in that group, and you're like I don't get it. It's like, can we just not just look, as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to understand someone's way of life, right? But as far as I'm concerned, is if it's not harming you and they're not harming anyone else, then why can't they live their life free of persecution and just have the same rights and the same values as you have?
Of course.
That's how I see it. Just as straightforward and simple as that, really.
Yeah, but you're way ahead of most. I think that is how we should believe, but how surprisingly most people don't.
Seriously, no, I'm serious. This is something I literally wake up every day and I open up social media and I lose my mind over. I'm like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand why you are annoyed at someone for being who they are. They can't be anybody else. Just let them live their life. But people, they just don't get it. It's almost like everybody wants to enforce their values or pigeonhole everyone in from their perspective. If you don't fit their outlook, then you're in the wrong, kind of thing. It's just crazy.
Well, we're lucky that passion in you has led to you not becoming a keyboard warrior or someone that throws your opinions at people.
I witnessed.
You'll do it.
I did it.
But it's led to Undivided, which at least is a positive sort of outpouring of love into a brand. But what I want to start with, what I want to start with though is the way that labels have effectively been put on you throughout your life, which has maybe led you to having such passionate views on labels today.
Right.
So you are Nigerian, but grew up in London, right?
So I'm actually British. My parents are Nigerian because I was actually born in London.
Right. Okay.
So obviously then I'm British, but like, yeah, but my parents are Nigerian, and I don't know. It's without being inside that culture, you probably wouldn't realize. But even though you're born in Britain, you still have more affiliation with being Nigerian than anything else.
Well, this is exactly it.
Yeah.
So you grew up there, but then you had a few of your school years were back in Nigeria before you moved back to the UK.
Yeah. So I did my primary school first. I think my first year was going on to my second year, and then we went back to Nigeria, and then I was there until university years, and then came back to England, kind of thing, you know. So
I guess your first label that you may have faced in your life, or what I want to ask you about, is were you seen as a Nigerian in England, or even a Londoner who moved to Nigeria when you lived over there? And how were your upbringings in both of those countries shaping the way that you eventually have become today?
Well, definitely. Like when I grew up because when I grew up in England, there wasn't that many Africans at all. Most of the black people were from the Caribbean, from the West Indies, and so it was really weird for me because I went to school and everyone was like, for starters, my mum gave me a really long name, which was not helpful. So
Okay, wait. What's your actual name?
It's Olatokunbo.
Sweet.
It's easy now.
It's a cool name.
Well, I couldn't say it till I was 12. So kids kids anyway, they don't need an excuse to single you out.
For sure.
So the hardest time I got, believe it or not, was from other black kids because I was African and not West Indian kind of thing. So I never really fit in, and then and it was annoying because growing up then, I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. Oh damn! I forgot the name of it now. It was just out recently, and it was actually a story about another guy who's Nigerian who grew up in England, and literally he used to scrub his skin, to try and be whiter kind of thing because his adoptive parents were white and everyone around him was white. And honestly, that's how you feel because there's no representation of you on TV. There's no representation in your school. Everyone's different from you, so you feel like you don't fit in, and everyone's always teasing you about being this and being African and Spear Chaka and Kunta Kinte and all that kind of stuff. So you take it to heart, and I really wasn't really doing well at school at all because I just didn't fit in, and it wasn't until I went to Nigeria that I actually kind of realized that actually I came from somewhere, because again back then Nigerians were very kind of had that kind of Commonwealth mentality, so basically when they came to Britain they were like, we're going to slot into the system, we're going to work really hard, and we're not going to try and stand out. So they didn't tell you anything about your culture at all. So everything I learned from my culture, or supposedly was my culture, was from everybody else who obviously knew nothing about my culture either. So they're like, oh, you guys you live in mud huts and you do this and everything else. And no word of a lie, when I went to Nigeria, that's I was expecting to see that, because no one had told me any different. True. So when I got there, it was like a bit of a shock because it was obviously nothing like that kind of thing. So yeah, it was difficult and then going to Nigeria, it's the opposite. Like, you're still an outsider because then now you've got an English accent. You didn't grow up there. And because your parents wanted to blend in, they didn't teach you your language, so you don't speak your language. So you're still considered an outsider kind of thing. So you still, they still called you, names, but just different ones kind of thing, So yeah, it was interesting. But I suppose from that perspective, kind of being labelled and kind of being an outsider all the time, I suppose that's what kind of gave me that view about, kind of just letting people be, really. If someone's different, what does it matter as long as the person's not harming you? And I suppose that's why I started developing that outlook kind of thing, So. But
it's interesting when, effectively as an adult, being not part of the gang is sort of cool, or that's what business owners are, and that's what people that make it and do fantastic things are. Whereas as a kid, you just want to fit in. You want to be 5 out of 10, run of the mill. Otherwise, kids are nasty and pick up on anything.
Right, listen, it's the worst. It's like, you don't. Like I said, kids will just pick on any little thing, and then they feel like you've got something. Like, I had my name, then I had the fact that I was African, and then I had the fact that I was like head and shoulders above everyone else. So that didn't help either, So it's like, so you feel like a proper mutant. You know what I mean? It's like, so it does affect you, and you kind of struggle for a bit. But like you said, at some point you realise actually being different is actually beneficial and not a hindrance. And it's funny because as a kid, no one ever tells you that. Like, you know, everyone tries to make you fit in all the time. So you always feel like, oh, you know, what's wrong with me? You know, why am I not like everyone else? Like your parents or school teachers, no one, they're always trying to make you, even like, because one of the things I had in school was I was always constantly asking questions, like, you know, like if I had been in an art history class or a religious class and they say this and everything, and I'd be like, oh, but who said so? Do you know what I mean? And maybe send me to the principal's office. I'm like, I just want to know. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I'm just curious. Like, who told you that? Do you know what I mean? Like, because they'd be like, oh, wait, it says in the book, and you're like, I know, but who wrote the book? And
you
like,
would have been a nightmare to teach.
Oh, even my mum couldn't stand me. She was like, that's enough. I've answered questions, you know. But I was just curious. You know what I mean? I really wanted to know who made these things up. Like, I used to be the kind of kid that I used to like literally lay awake at night, like pondering the universe. Like, you know, how far back does the universe go? It's like, you know, how many stars in there? Do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff that would literally just give
your mum's going, you're 4, colour in and shut up.
Shut up.
But it's fitting that you say that, you know, you were picked on for the way you looked or the fact that you were head and shoulders above everyone else. For anyone not watching this, you're a big guy, right?
Big guy.
But you know, now, or the way that your life has gone, and you know, one of the many careers I listed at the top of the show is that you model, which is exactly, you know, based on what you look at.
Yeah.
And I think what's fitting in that, what I like to talk about, is the fact that you're not your standard model, right? You're not the 17-year-old stick thin, getting the kit off all the time. Actually, I've seen you say recently that you actually aren't comfortable getting your kit off. You're considered is it even a plus size model, or just a bigger model, whatever the word is for it?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know, one, how it was that you got into modelling. Yeah. And two, what is it like being in that industry as a person that doesn't fit the stereotype of being a model?
Right, okay. Well, funny enough, when I returned back to England, I was walking down, and this is the weirdest thing because I was so self-conscious as a kid growing up that I was so shy, like for massive, still am, it's just that you learn to sort of like deal with it, you know, you kind of like learn to park it kind of thing. But and I remember I was walking down King's Road in London, and at the time King's Road in London was one of those places where everybody went to be seen, you know, all the models got picked off there kind of thing. And I'm walking down there with my girlfriend, who at the time was a photographer, and I was like, I think I was 21. Yeah, I was 21, and this guy walked up to me and said, oh, do you want to do some modelling? And I looked at him like, mate, you've been drinking, or you know what I mean, kind of thing. And I was just fobbing him off, and my girlfriend was like, no, I'll take your business card. And she took his business card, and I was like, that's not going to happen, kind of thing. And she just wouldn't let it lie. She just kept going on about it. And in the end, I said, all right, you know what, let's go. And she took me down there, and they took my details and stuff like that, took a couple of shots and sent them out, and I immediately got a job, kind of thing. And they were like, oh yeah, come and do this job. And I did the job. I was like, oh, that was like good fun, because it was actually a filming one kind of thing. So that was actually good fun, and I was like, I kind of enjoyed that. But then after that, I had to go to castings for other jobs, and because I didn't come from that kind of background where I wanted to be a model, I kind of like just took it really casually, kind of thing. But you know, I turn up to these castings, and look, this is no word of a lie. In Australia, it's really relaxed. But in London, it's like you turn up to a casting, there's like 1,000 guys, right? Like 98% of them will be gay. Do you know what I mean? It was me and one other guy will be straight, and then they're all like so vain. Like literally, there'll be like guys. I go to the toilet. There'll be guys in the toilet like doing press ups and listen, mate. You think the girls are bad? The guys are just worse.
Oh, for sure.
And I remember like the thing that stuck in my mind the most was this guy. There was like, because we done all our stuff and we were waiting, and then he said, "All right, we're just gonna take a Polaroid of you and put you on your application." And they took Polaroid of me. I was all like, normally you take a picture, you know, put it on my application. They would take this guy next to me, his Polaroid, and he was like,
yeah, nice. The rehearsal look.
And that's when I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm ready for this kind of thing, you know what I mean? So I just literally just like not doing that anymore, and I kind of knocked that on the head. Just thought I was really uncomfortable in that environment, and then came here, and it's up by Byron, and there was a gym, and one of the guys, I was swimming, and one of the guys who owns the gym came up to me, and he was quite friendly. We started talking, we got to know each other, and he was like, oh, you know, I do a bit of acting, you should come along. and do some acting. I was like, oh, it's not really me kind of thing. He said, no, just come along, you know, see how you get along. You don't have, commitment. I thought, all right, go along. Went along with him. Then enjoyed it. Strangely enough, I had a really good time, and just kind of kept doing it. And then knock on from that, because I'd done that, I came to Sydney to do my passport and visa thing. And while I was there, I saw a guy who got introduced to me via Facebook in England. And I've never met him, but he just happened to be walking down the street. I know in Sydney, right? How weird. And I called out to him, and he's like, oh, yeah, you're blah, blah's friend. I'm like, yeah, no, I've friended you on Facebook. He goes, oh, by the way, I'm making a film. I've got a part that would be really good for you. And I'm like, oh, literally, I don't know how to act.
I don't live here.
I don't, yeah.
I said,
yeah, I said, I'm not by Brian. I don't know how to act. I said, I've only been doing a couple of classes. He said, no, he said, I'm pretty sure you'll be all right. And then went down to Sydney for a month and did this film, and then met a guy on there. Funny enough, I was meant to do a non-speaking part, but the guy who was meant to do my part chickened out and said he was he was meant to do another part, chickened out, said there's too many words, and he asked me would I do it, and I said yeah, I'll give it a shot.
You're okay with words.
yeah, exactly.
You're okay to speak.
So exactly. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it, and then so I did it, and then and the guy who I replaced, who did my part in turn, he happened to be an agent at the time, so he was like, oh, you should sign up to my agent and put in commercials and stuff like that. And I said, cool. Anyway, me and him got friendly, and then I went to his house one day, and I was just talking to him outside in the corridor as I was leaving, and his neighbour came out, and his neighbour was like, we were chatting, and then just as I was about to go, his neighbour said, oh, by the way, you should try and do plus size. I do plus size modelling. You should try and do some plus size modelling. And I was like, I'm acting, why not? I could give it another shot. You know what I mean? I'm in my late 40s now. It's different. So I was like, I didn't really expect them to take me. So I was like, he gave me the number and stuff, and I rang them, and they said, oh, could you measure yourself? I measured myself, and they're like, oh, we sent your measurements off to these places, and they're going crazy. They need you to come in straight away, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, calm down.
Unreal.
Yeah, and that's literally how it started plus size modelling.
It's just been luck. It's just meeting the right people at the right times
constantly. It's just nothing planned. It's just one thing after another, and I just thought it must be meant to be kind of thing, because it's just like, this is like last time I modeled was 21, so there's like almost like a 30-year gap, of modeling, me not modeling, and then suddenly it's come full circle. So,
have you faced any obstacles or difficulties in being labelled a model, given that you're not that stereotype of what a model is?
I find it really weird when people say...
I find it weird even calling you a model, because it's so not what you project yourself as,
I still don't really see myself as a model. I think it's really strange. And people ask me, I say, yeah, I do some
photos sometimes.
Yeah.
Just avoid the word.
Yeah, I do avoid the word.
People take photos of me sometimes, they're paying me some money.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally like that, because it sounds so foreign.
Yeah.
Just saying, because it's so funny, because we're so conditioned. When you hear someone say I'm a model, you immediately, form
there's a box.
Yeah.
In people's brains of what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still so foreign to me to sort of say I'm a model, because then immediately you think, well, I don't fit that criteria, so that just doesn't apply to me, kind of thing. But it's just like we were saying before about labels. We just make these labels up and then think people should fit into these pigeonholes. But as things are going on right now, there's been this push for diversity and inclusion for more, diverse body shapes, skin colours, cultural background and all that kind of stuff. So I suppose right now, for me, it's probably good timing.
You're becoming more of a type. Yeah. That stereotype is broadening.
100%.
So we don't know what model is, maybe.
No, 100%. Of course, lots of companies still stick to that stereotypical kind of you've got to have the pretty face, the size 0 and all that kind of thing. But it is slowly changing, because I think the companies are realizing that people will buy more if they feel like they're represented. Of course. And because think about it. It's especially for me, if I go to a shop and it's kind of the shop is emblazoned with all these images of these super slim guys, wearing all these really cool clothes, I'm highly unlikely to go in there and think you're going to have my size. Yeah, of course. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, oh, you obviously don't cater for me. So the more you see people that look like you, the more likely you are to think, oh, I'll pop in here, have a look and see what they've got going. But yeah, it's a good move, I suppose.
What lessons have you learned from working in that industry which have helped you with Undivided, or the choices you've made at this early stage of your own clothing label?
I think, what lessons have I learned? I think mostly I probably would learn about, I would have learned was probably about presentation, I suppose. I suppose presentation is everything. People just like, you have to present things in a way that is digestible to people, kind of thing. So I might have in my mind how I want things to be, but I can't always see things from my perspective. I have to try and put myself in somebody else's shoes, kind of thing, So, a lot of times, like when you go to castings, even like for the film casting, sometimes, like I was meant to audition for a part, actually in Aquaman, funny enough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually the opening scene in one of the films, and I was meant to do this scene where I was meant to intimidate, kind of walk up to him in an intimidating way and ask him if he was the guy off TV, kind of thing. And then when they sent me the script, I was like, I'm supposed to be a biker in Upper New York State. And I'm like, as far as I know, the only people that live in Upper New York State are white or Inuit Indians, and as far as I know, when people envision a biker, they don't envision me. You know what I mean? So I'm like, why would you want me to audition for this? But they insisted, and I had to audition for it 4 times. But in the end, they gave it to a guy from the States. So I'm like, no shit.
You must get it all the time. You're always going to get cast as the big, scary guy, and people meet you and be like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, I know.
This guy's smiling all the time. This isn't going to work.
I actually got fired for a security job, 2 security jobs for doing that.
For smiling.
For smiling too much. So like you said, you're not intimidating enough. I'm like, how do I have to be intimidating?
The next topic I wanted to talk about is maybe the most important one. Now we've spoken about your upbringing, the way that may have affected you, and a bit of your career. This one is something much bigger, something that we could talk about for hours, so we're going to be careful.
Okay.
And something that's so current, right? So what I want to talk about is, for those that don't know, you are a black man.
Yeah.
Married.
What?
Yeah.
No one told me.
The people are listening, like, hang on, you could be anything. And then at least you've got a white partner.
Yes.
So particularly today, you guys got a beautiful daughter.
Yeah.
Today, when Black Lives Matter, everything that happens to George Floyd, and racism being so prevalent, I wanted to know, how is it that, how old is Willow?
She's 6.
She's 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So 6 with one black parent and one white parent must be such a confusing age to even comprehend the fact that racism exists in the world, right?
Yeah.
So how is it that you both have gone about explaining the Black Lives Matter movement, or what's happening with George Floyd, or everything that's going on in the world today, and the first 6 years of her life up to now? How is it that you've educated her about that?
It's a difficult one actually with Willow, because when she was younger, we were up by Byron, a small town in Byron, and it's very different because she was such a cute little kid. Like literally everyone said hello to her when we walked down the street, kind of thing. So she didn't see herself any different, and she thought, in fact, the first time we came to Sydney and I think she was about 3 or something, and she said hello to someone, the person didn't respond. She was like, oh, they can't talk. Yes. That's her response, because she just thought like everyone says hello to everyone, kind of thing.
That's adorable.
I know, right? But the thing with myself and Elise, we constantly have this conversation about when is it really appropriate to kind of shatter a kid's naivety, do you know what I mean, and their innocence, you know what I mean? Yeah. When is it an appropriate time? And we kind of decided we'll kind of approach every subject as it sort of like popped up, kind of thing, until she got older, and then obviously you can have like proper conversations, kind of thing. But like even the other day, Elise has been writing this book, and it's a rhyming book, and one of the verses in it is about people not liking everyone, and Elise was reading it to her, and she's saying that, oh, not everyone will like you, and you should have seen the confusion on Willow's face. She was like, what?
I'm so likeable.
What do you mean? What do you mean don't like me? You just couldn't get it. It was like, and then we had to explain a little bit that some people haven't matured of mind and see things in a really sort of like archaic way, and they will judge you sometimes because of the colour of your skin, sometimes because of your gender, sometimes because of your sexual preference, sometimes because of what God you decide to pray to. Some people are just like that, They're not always mean people. Most of the time, they're actually people who are very frightened of things they don't know and things they don't understand, and of change, and and sometimes it's also fear of not being relevant anymore, because some people don't have that much going on in their lives, and sometimes their identity is who they are, and if that gets taken away from them, they feel like, then what are they giving to society, kind of thing. And
does she get it? Did she understand it when you broke it down like that?
I think she gets parts of it. I don't think she gets all of it. I think because again, she kind of obviously has to deal with it on her level, and so she kind of equates it to some kid being mean to her in school kind of thing.
Yeah, compares it to the playground.
Yeah, so she boils it down to that level kind of thing. So she's like, oh, okay, I get it. So she just tells people they're not smart or they're not mature yet, kind of thing. So that's how she kind of makes it kind of like applicable to her, if that makes any sense. Because, yeah, I mean, the racism thing is difficult because, again, she's a product of two different cultures, right? Yeah. And in an ideal world, what we should be saying is that both cultures should have an equal input, and she should be raised, with both cultures equally. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it's like I had to explain to Elise, and that you, as much as she is a biracial child, you have to raise her as a black child, because unfortunately, we know she's a biracial child. A lot of black people look at her and see she's a biracial child, but unfortunately, as for most white people, she will just be a black child.
Yeah. And
that's how they're going to treat her. And so because of that, we have to raise her that way, because the last thing you want to do is raise her in the way thinking she's one thing and then get treated another thing.
She's not.
Yeah, exactly, because that's just going to be a rude awakening. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, that's how we raise her, and for me it's a bit of a shame, because I feel as a biracial child that you're literally an embodiment of what the world should be.
Yeah, you're the best of both.
Yeah, exactly. You're like almost like a superior human being. Do you know what I mean? But that's not how it plays out in real life. And then we have a lot of biracial kids growing up with lots of mental issues. I mean, again, when I was growing up, different times, but I knew two biracial guys. Both of them got given up for adoption when they were younger, because, of course, back then, if you had a biracial kid and the father scarpered, the mother was left with the biracial kid. Yeah. They got a lot of grief from the family, so they gave their kids up for adoption. And of course, growing up in a home is not good for anyone. Mm-hmm. So these guys came out of these homes, and actually both of them did pretty well for themselves. Both really good-looking guys. Both of them ended up committing suicide in the short run, because they just couldn't deal with the fact they didn't know who they were. They just couldn't fit into society. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's deep. You know what I mean? I know it seems quite superficial, but it runs, and that's even coming back to racism. Even that discussions, like I kind of lose my mind sometimes when I'm on social media and people are making a snap judgment about a situation, and I'm like, you do realize you've taken a snapshot of time, and you're sort of like basing your argument of like a very tiny, portion of a timeline. Like, you need to expand that time. Yeah, you need to look at it from the very beginning. It's not like, and people are like, oh, slavery was over a long time ago. You guys, and colonialism was over a long time ago. You guys need to get over it. But I'm trying to explain to you why it's not so easy to move forward, because it's actually the foundations of our issues. It's not like it happened and it was over and we've forgotten about it and we've moved on. It actually, a lot of our problems actually stem from there. They've actually grown from there. So until people can deal with that, then you can't really understand why someone, for example, in America wants to burn everything down. You can't relate to that, because recently I had a discussion with someone, and she's quite a smart woman, and even some of the things she was saying to me, and I said to her, and I said, look, you're going to take offense to this because people always do. I said, you're not going to understand because you're not black. She was like, she took offense to me, and it's not meant as, I'm not wearing it as a badge of honor. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to explain to you that for me to explain things to you, I have to go so far back.
Yeah, of course.
For you to.
But I think that's such a good point. I think I will never know anywhere near enough about racism because I'm not black. I'll never know anything about homophobia because I'm not gay.
Right.
All these huge topics, and the idea is not that if you don't know, you can't. If you
Can't
don't
be
know, it's so
supportive.
much more important for you to be supportive and to be open to learning. And actually, you posted something the other day that was, you just said, it said not racist or anti-racist.
Yes.
And I thought that is, I know that I have fallen into that trap on so many topics, so many
So
times. I
many
think most of us do.
Most people.
I know I'm not racist, but if
Yeah.
I see someone racist,
You
I'm
won't
going to go over there and scream
Oi.
and shout at them and punch them.
Headbutt.
And the same with homophobia, the same with all of those things. And actually, we're quietly, I'm not racist, I'm
Yeah.
not homophobic, but do I get up and
Say something.
confront? No, because we're freaking British and terrified of confrontation.
Shoot, British people don't even tell you when you've got toilet roll stuck to your heel.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's a very good point.
Yeah.
And I think, Willow is going to grow up and, in a way, she wins every argument on the race.
Right.
You see something racist, my dad's black, my mum's white.
Yeah.
She's can grow up and will, 'cause you two are brilliant, will be the most educated, rounded.
We hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, if she can't then,
Yeah.
well, that's on you.
Damn it.
But yeah, now we need to talk about Undivided. But I think I think what we've discussed up to this point has been the heartbeat of Undivided.
Yeah.
It's been, yes, we've talked about racism and labels and the fashion industry or modelling and how labels can affect people and stereotypes can affect people, and that's brought us to Undivided.
100%.
So how did it come about? We've spoken about the passions behind it, but what made you actually think,
Well,
activist clothing?
I kind of felt like, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to make my own clothing because, again, you mentioned I'm quite a large guy. So I always found that for some reason, people or designers or manufacturers seem to think that when you're large, you want to dress like your dad. And I'm like, based on what chart? You know what I mean? It's like, no, I want to wear nice things too. So I was like, I could start a fashion label for like bigger guys kind of thing, and I started on that, but for some reason it didn't really resonate. I wasn't really, when you sometimes you embark on something and you kind of feel like it's what you want to do, but it's not quite, there's something missing, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Anyway, as time goes on, I found myself on social media like telling people off, like about gay and this and basically losing my mind, and like Lisa was looking at me thinking, you gotta stop this is gonna drive you insane. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, but what am I supposed to do? And she said, well, no, because we got into argument. I said, because these people on the right, they always seem to have so much, they always seem to be so organized, and so they all seem to speak the same language, and they always seem to have money behind them. And she said, well, maybe we should try and make money so that we can put money behind arguments. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I should use the clothing company to make money so that I can actually have a bigger platform and, put money into like making, balancing things out a bit kind of thing. And that's how Undivided was born. So it was Underhead before, and then we then thought, what's a good name that, and we just came up with Undivided because we thought, yeah, why should we be divided, and that's how it came.
I like the idea of it being you angrily throwing shit at a wall and at least designing it into artwork.
Yeah, literally, that's
okay, these are all good ideas, let's make it something that's useful.
She's done that a few times for me. Literally, I'm just losing my mind. She's like, no, but okay, you just sit there, I'll just take this away now.
But it's interesting, I think that so much of Undivided, so it started as a crowdfunder, right? And I think so much of it is both an activist clothing label that's doing something good and a reason to start these conversations. That crowdfunder fast became let's have these conversations. Obviously let's raise the money money's going to a good cause, but let's have these good conversations people that don't have or avoid or only have online, screaming and shouting at each other. Was that intentional, or did that crowdfunder sort of become something bigger than you'd anticipated?
Well, the crowdfunder I completely underestimated actually, because again, Kickstarter, I don't know if people know, but Kickstarter is a lot harder than it looks. It's like, and we didn't know this until we embarked on it, but like a lot of people that are on Kickstarter, normally they're like massive companies masquerading as like,
right,
so they've literally got a massive mailing list and a lot of finance, because what you realize is that you have to do a lot of legwork before you do the Kickstarter. So you put ads out there, you've got mailing, this and everything else. That all takes money, and because obviously you've got to invest in graphics, photography. We were lucky in the sense that I could do all most of the graphics and things like that. So we saved a lot of money there, but even still, it was quite expensive. So, but we managed to get our point across somehow, and people loved it. I think it would have even been bigger if we had more money for like a mailing list, you know, to build up that kind, or more time for an ad campaign, but we didn't have it. Yeah. So, but the reception was pretty good. I think the only thing was, I think I chose the wrong item to start with, because I quickly realized that everybody wears baseball caps. So I kind of thought everybody did, but a lot of people were like, yeah, I don't look really good in baseball caps. You do. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, but what I like about baseball caps is that everyone fits a baseball cap. You're saying you want to make it for plus size, or you know, it's in a way, it's not, do I look big in this, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a clothing item that everyone wears. Everyone can effectively look good or you know, the same in it effectively.
Exactly.
It's not.
And when I thought of it, I kind of thought, well, apart from there was a couple of reasons. One was because I was going to start with a T-shirt, but not coming from a fashion design background, you kind of take for granted, like you wear a shirt, you kind of take for granted how much work goes into it. Mm-hmm. So when I started approaching people for like, you know, oh, I want to make a T-shirt, one of the things they would say was like, oh, you know, what stitching do you want? What weight of this GSM? I was like, what? You know what I mean? It's like completely Greek to me. I was like, just hold that thought, I'll be right back.
What stitching?
Yeah, it's like, I'll be right back. So I was like, yeah, maybe I should start something else. And then I thought the baseball cap, because that MAGA hat was flying around, and I thought, you know what? Let's make a baseball cap to sort of like go against that kind of thing. That everyone knows when you see someone wearing a MAGA hat, you know that, oh, that person's an idiot. Do you know what I mean? So straight away you give them a wide berth. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a symbol where people would see it and think, oh yeah, that guy cares about other people, cares about the planet, and cares where we're going in the future kind of thing. So that's what I'm trying to, the symbol of Undivided is I'm trying to get people to see it and think, yeah, that person's a like-minded person kind of thing, you know? So I'd like to make a lot of money, of course, but at the same time, the message is more important. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I'm trying to get across more than anything else. That, you know, it's like a safe place. You know, if you see someone in a club or bar or you know, cafe wearing it, you know, that person can, you know, you can go up and chat to them, you know, kind of thing. You know, because that person's, you know, when you see the Sea Shepherd's type T-shirt type of thing, you know that if you see someone in the Sea Shepherd T-shirt, you kind of think, you know, where that person's kind of outlook kind of lies, you know. So, and I kind of want the same for Undivided.
But as well as that, you said, yeah, you better make money with it, but also I know that the quality of the hat's been something so important to you. It's not a case of let's get these things made cheap and you know, sell them by the millions. Talk us through the actual hat itself, you know, what's gone into it, what is it? God. Yeah, because I know that took some time. There was some toing and froing with China.
Again, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, thinking you know things and you don't, and then you start talking to Chinese manufacturers. First of all, there's the communication breakdown, because obviously talking technical languages is different from having a conversational, like, you know, chat, and that got lost, and we literally were back and forth, and unfortunately, the Chinese don't really have this thing about quality. For them, it's more about cheapness and how much money you can save. Yeah. And but for me, it was more like, one of the things I wanted to avoid was, I didn't want to have an item where it was just throwaway fashion, because I've owned baseball caps before from like some of the market leaders, and even though they're made from natural materials, I find that, you know, you can only wear them for 6 months. If you wear them non-stop, by the time you're sweating them and everything else, blah blah, you can't wash them, because if you wash them,
they disintegrate.
They lose their shape. The whole thing is color. They shrink. You know, so I thought, well, I can't approach it from that perspective. I did try and approach it from a perspective where I could use recycled. Someone had just at the time started making this recycled material from stuff reclaimed from the sea, kind of thing. Problem was, they didn't have two things. They didn't have a material thick enough, and also they were selling it in such massive quantities. Like, for me, they were like, well, for one color, if I wanted one, they were like, it's 50 grand.
Right there.
And I was like, I don't have 50 grand, no, even not for one color, so I couldn't afford that. And also, they didn't have what I needed. So then I went the other route. So I thought, what would be kind of a long-lasting material? So literally, if you did buy a cap, that it would last you for years. You know what I mean? So, and it was back and forth with China. They sent me a couple of things, and they just didn't stand up in the end. you know, they sent me this fabric, and I had a sample made, wore it to the gym, sweated in. I mean, like, I'm a sweater. Like, literally, when I say I sweated in it, it was like soaking. Like, literally, like all the it's raining because all the sweat collects in the hat and then starts dripping off the peak.
You're employed by the hat companies to be the sweaty guy.
Yeah, exactly. I literally put this cap through its ring.
Okay, so that's why they've got a breathable back. Is that it?
Yeah.
This is purely selfish.
It's for me.
So, and what is the material then? What was?
It's a microfiber, so it's like a polyester-based material fabric. So it's a micro, which polyester is like, I think it's plastic-based. So you can actually make it from sort of like runoffs, leftover, you know, kind of thing. So, and that's when, you know, eventually we hope to be using things that literally would have just been discarded, and we can just take that and then do our own thing. But again, that all takes money, so we have to wait to do that further on. But that is a derivative of polyester. So that literally you can literally just, like, if it gets stains, or you can take a sponge and wipe it, and then you run it under a tepid tap, and then just leave it to hang dry, and it'll look brand new. Like this hat I've been wearing probably now, I would say probably about 2 years solid, because it's my favourite colour. It literally goes with
How many colours we got? Because there's a huge array just here. How
11
many colours?
11
colours.
Which,
phenomenal.
Again, in hindsight, it was not a good idea. Because, like, that was not great. No, I probably should have started with 2 or 3, but it looked so boring. So I thought, you know, I wanted to have more colours, and you just don't know what people want either. So we ended up with 11 colours. The material is really good. It's flexible. One of the things that come back, people say most about it, they love, is that it's comfortable. It's one of the most comfortable baseball caps in the world.
Well, it's worth saying, so it hasn't got one of the annoying, what's it called? It hasn't got the Velcro strip at the back. It hasn't got the button strip at the back, which is bad. The worst one's the one that's got the material that goes through with the buckle.
Oh, I hate that. They never hold. They always just pull open.
And you always have the dangly bit that just comes out. You've got a small head, you've got the dangly bit.
Well, I'm the opposite. Like, you've got a small head, but I got a massive head. So mine is always like at the maximum. And it's always like
holding on by a thread.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we avoided that. That's worth saying. Yeah. And then where do you see Undivided being in 5-10 years? What's the next step?
Oh, for me, I'd love to see Undivided in the next 5-10 years being a label like, for example, like a kind of like a G-Star, Tom's kind of, you know, label where it's kind of up there. It's a premium brand, not like a designer, so the prices are not going to be crazy, but it's not going to be super cheap either. And I hope to kind of have like a capsule wardrobe, which we do like year in, year out, and just change maybe the colours and things, you know, now and then adding limited editions to that. And, you know, so we plan on doing t-shirts, hoodies, you know, jeans, you know, trainers, sunglasses, like literally everything. So it's just step by step. So I'm trying to do the most affordable and then just try and build up from there, kind of thing. Just so, but like 10 years from now, I'm hoping it's like a household name that, you know, people say, yeah, we know that brand, kind of thing. So. And
have you already earmarked causes or charities that you want these profits to go towards, or at the moment is it still?
That's a struggle for me actually, because I realised when we were looking around when we started it that there wasn't actually a charity that kind of dealt with what we were talking about. So at the moment I'm kind of contemplating working with some people to maybe form one, and then nice. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and then literally put the money into that kind of thing. But I've spoken to a few people. I mean, they're kind of involved in other charities at the moment, so I don't know how that's going to go, because again, with everything, it's like you have to involve time, and at the moment I'm struggling as it is, kind of thing. But in the long run, that's what I think will happen. We'll have like an Undivided trust or something, which will then put on events, you know, make short films, you know, put out like, you know, Facebook stories and things like that. Just things where highlighting our differences and why they're positive opposed to negative. Because I find when you're on social media, everything's so negative, you know. So it's going to be, it will have like, I hope to have a station like, you know, like you have the BuzzFeed, or you have Now This kind of thing. I kind of want to have like, you know, We the Undivided kind of thing. So like you're just putting out positive stories about what people are doing from different backgrounds, and you know, and how people are working together even from different backgrounds. Like there's so many stories that like just get pushed aside, where you don't hear about, like, when you hear about the rioters, and then you don't hear about the Muslims forming a defensive ring around people who were getting beaten up, or the vice versa. And the other thing happens, like, you don't hear about the white mums that were protecting black protesters, or in South Africa when they had a riot, or the white people that were like formed a barricade in front of them and the police. You don't hear about those things.
So it's going to be not only an activist brand, but the first ever positive news channel.
Yeah,
which won't sell in the way that sex and terrorism and all them sells papers, but it will be.
We hope
it'll be for our little unit.
Yeah,
grow from there.
Well, because like, I go on social media at the moment, everything is like doom and gloom, and like I just want to go on and like see something. You know what I mean? Positive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mate, it's so shit right now. Yeah. It's like I'm just like I just, you know, I have to be on social media because of Undivided and stuff and that. But honestly, if I didn't have to, I would literally remove everything from my phone. But it's just like, it's so depressing for the, you know.
Well, I think it's exactly this fact, the fact that you feel so passionately and deeply even about a throwaway comment on Facebook,
right,
that makes you such a fitting leader of this Undivided movement. You know, I think you've got the most infectious smile that I've ever seen. And I think your beauty is something much beyond your looks. I think you're an inspiring husband.
Stop it.
You are. Take it, you're British. It's going to be hard to hear. I think you're an inspiring husband and a loving dad. And I think that Undivided is a true testament to you. And I think it represents exactly what you're about. So I encourage anyone who's listening and watching to buy a cap. But more importantly, buy into the message of Undivided. I think that's the most important thing today.
That is definitely the most important thing.
So thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, Hamish.
Not at all. It's been a joy. We could sit here and talk all night, but we won't.
We
won't on record. We will on record.
Yeah, I've got cake to eat.
Yeah, exactly. You do as well. Yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
No worries, man. No worries.